Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating phenomenon in modern political data, the state of voter-based loyalty as of early May 2026. Think about it. What actually happens to a deeply dedicated political base when they're slammed with macro-level national turbulence? Do they fracture under the pressure, or do they hold completely firm? We're going to rely on some really insightful recent reporting from The Conversation, The Guardian, and BBC News to objectively map out exactly what is happening in the electorate right now.
So the fundamental question we have to start with is this: how do global conflicts and economic struggles impact core voter loyalty? You know, in traditional political analysis, there's always been this assumed law of gravity. When the economy struggles, or when the nation gets pulled into complex overseas conflicts, incumbent or leading political figures almost always see a massive erosion in their support. But as we're about to see, the current data is completely turning that assumption on its head.
To get a real sense of this, let's take a macro-level view of the 2026 political landscape.
Okay, based on reporting from The Conversation, the overarching macro environment in May 2026 is defined by some incredibly intense headwinds. First off, we're seeing a measurable decline in overall popularity across the general public. And that's largely being driven by serious economic concerns. Persistently high prices are really affecting people's daily lives. Plus, on top of that domestic strain, you've got the massive geopolitical weight of an ongoing conflict with Iran. Historically speaking, it is incredibly rare for a political figure to survive this specific combo of crises without their base totally fragmenting. Normally, these are the exact conditions that rewrite electoral maps.
But that brings us directly to what we're calling the core loyalty paradox.
Just look at this stark contrast in the polling data from The Conversation and The Guardian. When you look at all Republican voters, 38% maintain a strong approval. Now, that's a significant slice, sure, but it still reflects standard political fluctuation within a broader party. But wow, when you isolate the data to those who specifically identify as MAGA Republicans, an overwhelming 90% approve of the job performance. The broader base is clearly feeling those national headwinds, but this core MAGA group, they remain entirely insulated.
To really put that broader party metric into perspective, this 38% slice of the total Republican electorate isn't just, leaning favorably. They are officially categorized as maintaining strong approval. Despite sky-high prices and massive geopolitical tension, over a third of the entire party remains an absolute immovable floor of support. It is a stunning display of political resilience against all that macro-level turbulence.
Let's break down these numbers just a bit further to see how this works.
90%. That is a staggering number. That 90% approval rating from MAGA Republicans represents something completely unusual in modern data tracking. When we talk about that intense, unwavering, I support Donald Trump no matter what level of loyalty, almost akin to a highly dedicated fandom, but in a political arena, this is exactly what it looks like in the data. Historically, even the most popular candidates bleed 5 to 10% during economic downturns among their biggest fans. But this core block hasn't fractured at all. If anything, The Conversation's data indicates that external pressures have literally solidified their unity.
And looking deeper at that 38% floor of all Republican voters, we're seeing a massive buffer effect in real time. This metric completely changes the calculus for broad election strategies. Think about it. When over a third of your party's total base acts as a permanent, immovable foundation, your campaign doesn't even need to spend resources shoring them up. You can redirect all that energy, all that funding straight toward the margins. Having a guaranteed floor like that fundamentally alters how political strategists map out an entire election cycle.
Now here's where it gets really specific, and honestly, perhaps the most surprising. According to that polling data from The Conversation, over 87% of MAGA-aligned voters specifically approve of the actions taken regarding the ongoing conflict with Iran. Foreign policy, especially active military conflict, is incredibly volatile, right? It usually generates huge anxiety across all demographics. Yet here we have an overwhelming endorsement of how this specific, high-stakes international crisis is being handled.
So, what's driving this? Let's look at the America First policy anchors.
The absolute bedrock of this unshakable support, according to BBC News, is firmly rooted in the America First platform. And this isn't just some catchy slogan for these voters, it is a totally cohesive worldview. When researchers actually interview these voters, they constantly hear that this platform prioritizes domestic stability above literally everything else. So when external pressures mount, whether that's runaway inflation or international skirmishes, this America First framework reassures the base. It tells them that the actions being taken, no matter how disruptive they might seem on the news, still perfectly align with their fundamental priorities.
And you can see this unified support play out across some really key policy pillars. We're seeing firm, continued backing of the overarching America First ideology, which then cascades directly down into high approval for both the handling of the Iran conflict and the ongoing challenges directed toward NATO. It forms this really interconnected foreign policy vision. To these core voters, pushing back on NATO and engaging in the Middle East aren't seen as chaotic contradictions at all. They're viewed as necessary, deliberate steps within a unified strategy that they fully, 100% endorse.
So, what does this all mean for us? When macro turbulence, things like inflation and international conflict, completely fails to fracture a core base, how does this steadfast loyalty shift the traditional rules of political gravity? If the old models confidently tell us that a bad economy equals a massive drop in support, but the current data shows a core base locked in at 90%, are we analyzing modern politics with outdated physics? It is a profound question for the future of political strategy, and frankly one the data guarantees we're going to be asking for a very long time. Thanks so much for exploring these numbers with us today in this explainer.